sincerely. We are going to talk about staying calm, which right now my adrenaline's going pretty fast, and so not feeling super calm. But we need to set up areas in our home and in our classroom where our kids, when they're feeling this level of anxiety or feeling just frustrated, any big feelings. I like to talk about, I'm going to look at you guys because looking at myself talking is freaking me out. And so any of those big feelings, we need a place where our kids can go. And what we used to call it in my house was rebooting. Natalie needed to reboot after she came home, especially from school. Like, our kids work so hard to keep their little bodies together all day long. And then when they come back home to their safe environment, which is where we are, they tend to fall apart. And I had a tendency as a mom to go, okay, we got to get that homework out of the way. And that did not work well in our house because Natalie had worked all day long, extremely hard. She was tired. She needed to just regroup from the stressors that she'd had throughout the day. And so having a spot that is either in your house somewhere or in your child's bedroom even is extremely important. And when you're setting up that spot, the hardscape is not that big of a deal. It can be done in many different ways. I saw one parent that came in and was telling me actually that she sent a photo of what she had set up, and she had her couch, and then she had another couch, and they went corner to corner. And that created this little square that had the wall, and then the side of the couch and the side of the couch. And so her child would crawl over the side of the couch, and that was his sensory spot. And I loved that idea because it was very enclosed, which most of our kids tend to want to have a very intimate spot that is theirs. And so things like a pop-up tent work, a bed tent work out really well, or using your furniture to create a little spot. I've also seen in classrooms where teachers have taken their desk and taken the part under their desk and set up a little sensory cave for someone to go into. And I think just knowing for our kids that need this, knowing that it's there and they can use it at their own discretion is really important. It's empowering them. Many times, Natalie's now 20 and she's in college, and many times just having something that she knew was in place for her, if she started feeling overwhelmed in school or at home, she didn't even have to use it. It was just knowing it was there if she started feeling those big feelings. So I think both in the classroom and especially at home, we've got to provide our kids that area. And inside that area, once you figure out where your spot is, and you might even have a couple of spots in your house that are sensory friendly areas or safe spots to go and regroup. One, we need to make sure our kids view this area as a positive. So a place where they can go, they can choose to go, should never ever be used as a consequence for a poor decision or something like that. In that case, I would say if Natalie was having a meltdown over something and she chose to go there, that's totally fine. But it shouldn't be because I've said, okay, we didn't make some good choices, you go there. That's not what a safe sensory spot is. And then once you found your spot for it, then I encourage you to make sure that you're bringing in all the senses that we have. The ways that we get the input into our brains from these senses. And there are actually, I think, 8 of them. I used to think there were 7, but there are actually 8. And make sure we have things in, tools, and not toys, tools. If we're using it for the betterment of ourselves, not for our entertainment, but to bring us down into that regulated space where we can be the best people we can be, it's a tool. So we need to use that terminology with our children, that it's a tool. And so I wanted to just kind of go through the different areas and talk about examples of things that you could put into that area, and having your child actually have some buy-in to that, I think is a really good idea. Even if you made it a family sensory spot where everyone was able to say, well, I find I'm drawn to this type of texture, or I'm drawn to having something weighted. So I want to be sure I put something in there that when I'm feeling overwhelmed. And I think that brings in that modeling piece too, where we as parents, we have to model this good behavior for our kids. We have to model good coping. When I'm yelling at my kids over something, you know, I'm modeling the worst, and that's typically the one that they just hold on to and take it out into the world. So we definitely want to make sure that our kids are seeing us use sensory tools to help us cope. Because I don't know, I've been running this business for 12 years. I've been a mom for 20 years, and I have never seen our world in a more, with a greater level of anxiety than we have now. And it's hitting from young kids all the way through adults, because we're facing things we haven't had to face before, and it hits us all differently, but it hits us. And so, you know, in our store, we talk about anxiety most of the time. I just had a customer, the one I was just talking to, their 3-year-old was in the store, and she was looking around, and they said, our biggest problem right now is anxiety. We're talking 3. She's 3. So I think having something, teaching our kids, modeling for our kids how to handle the stresses of life is just the most important. It's not even as important as how we do it, is that they see us doing it as their role models. So as far as input, of course, we all know about, you know, one of our methods of input is oral. So you will see a lot of times kids putting things in their mouths that you wouldn't think they would put in their mouth. And it's been going on for generations. You know, there are chewed up pin caps from your grandparents. You know, we've found ways to get that pressure through our jaw. And it's really not about tasting something. It is truly that pressure in your jaw area that you're getting. Many times somebody's not chewing it up, they're just chewing on it. So I would suggest having something in that area for oral, just pressure through oral means. And to me, the easiest thing to do would be a pencil topper that you can chew on. You know, I recommend having some mindfulness activities in there, like worry journals, doodlers, coloring books, anything that you or your children might enjoy doing just for relaxation, have that in there. And having one of those colored pencils with a chewable on it is just an excellent thing to include. And that brings in, to me, aromatherapy. So we are definitely impacted by the things that we smell, in good ways and bad ways. And, you know, lavender has the reputation of being a fantastic aromatherapy fragrance for a lot of people. It also puts some people into getting a migraine. So, you know, like, everybody's scent go-to is going to be different. And so I would just say, have some scents or fragrances. I tend to like, rather than a fragrance, I like an actual oil-based scent. So instead of it being made in a lab, it's coming from a seed. That's just me personally. But I would have like an aromatherapy wrap, or we even have scented chewables. So you might put a chewable in there that serves as a pencil chew, and it's also grape smelling. And you're just adding that scent or that fragrance that your child responds well to in their sensory spot. You could do an aroma diffuser, that makes sense too. Or you can put your drops on anything. So if you've got like, just a soft textural blanket or scarf or lovey or something like that that's already in the sensory spot, and you know that your child does really well when they're around citrus scents, then you could just drop a few drops from, an essential oil that's in the citrus family. Or I know a lot of children respond really well to coffee. Obviously, we adults respond well to that smell too. It doesn't even taste as good as it smells. But I've known of parents that included a little pouch of coffee beans that their kiddo was able to take to school and have on the desk. And it serves two purposes. Sometimes there are scents or odors in the room that are bothersome to them. So if they've got something that's strong smelling on their desk, that helps. Or it may just be that a spearmint, a mint, it helps alert. Lemon helps with memory. So finding the scents that your children like and that you like and bringing those into your sensory spot, I think is really important. Texture is also big with our kids. And when I talk about this, many times I have parents saying, well, why would I try to use texture as a tool, a regulation tool, when my child can't even handle a tag in their shirt? And the difference is they're choosing the textures that they find regulating. Your shirt is something that is put onto you. You aren't part of that process. So like my daughter did not like any kind of tags inside any shirts, and we were having to cut them out. But even more than cutting them out, we were having to pick out the threads, get the tag off of there, even if it had like embroidery on the front when she was young, and then it had one of those little silky things that they iron in, so this thread, she couldn't even handle that. Yet texture is one of her big regulators when she's trying to choose a fidget to have around her. So what I would suggest as far as texture is all around us. If you go into Dollar Tree, you're going to be surrounded by different textures. If you go into Joann's Fabric, you're going to be surrounded by different textures. Find what your kid is drawn to and bring some of that into the sensory spot. Because just a piece of fabric that you've cut, you've just gotten them to give you a little sample. They'll give you samples, little bitty ones, for free at Joann's, and then just put a little basket full of those, because our kids like to rub it. Then silicone is also a big positive textural thing for most people. And how pointy or slinky or slimy even, that the silicone is in its texture is going to appeal to different people. But I like silicone a lot, only because you can throw it in the dishwasher, or if your child chose to chew on it, it's safe to put in their mouth, and it allows for a lot of different textures. Even like they have these little silicone circles that have little kind of bristles on them that you can use for cleaning dishes and things like that. At the Dollar Tree, they've got little circles with them, and even something like that they can just rub between their palms to get that nice texture. I've found sticks that they use for water bottle cleaners and things like that feel great when you just turn it in your hand. So if you're keeping an open mind when you're out and about at the stores and you see something, put it in your hand, see how it feels. If you've got your little guys with you or your big guys with you, ask them how that feels in their hand, because that might be a perfect textural tool to have in that sensory spot. As far as texture goes, I think that kind of covers it. It can be in many, many different forms. We even have slap bracelets that we've taken. We have silicone slap bracelets, but we also have slap bracelets where we've taken the inside out of a regular one and we've covered it with a minky cover. So you get that nice soft blanket feel, but it's on your wrist, and it's easy to take into school or just to have into your sensory spot as a way to get that texture. So just keep yourself open to that, and there's lots of different examples of things that we can do with that. One textural item that is real big in my family is Natalie's a picker. And so she tends to pick at her cuticles till they bleed. And sometimes she'll pick at some little spot on her face or on her leg or whatever. So picking's been a problem for us for about 10 years. And we finally came upon anything with rhinestones. So in high school, she had to wear a lanyard with her ID on it. And so we found a rhinestone lanyard, and she would pick the rhinestones off that lanyard throughout the day. And, you know, even though I was buying a lanyard about every week, that is so much better than us going to the doctor because her fingers are infected. Or when she got impetigo in middle school, and I kept thinking, well, you're just picking. Well, she started out as picking, and then we got impetigo, and then, you know, it took over her face. So picking's a real issue, and those kids that are drawn to a nice strong texture might really enjoy being able to pick off those little rhinestones. And you can buy stickers that are all done with rhinestones. And I buy lots of things with rhinestones to carry in the store. And then when they come in, we try and see, can we get the rhinestones off? How hard is it? There's a lady that one of my employees told me about that makes picking rocks. And so she takes lava rocks and she coats them in like a silicone kind of thing. And then you buy this rock and she gives you a little picking tool. And the whole point is you're picking all this skin off of this lava rock. I mean, cool idea. Wish I'd come up with it. I did approach her, and she doesn't do wholesale. So if you need one of those picking rocks, you'll have to look her up on Google and get a rock from her. But anyway, good idea. Then the next most powerful thing I think you need, I would be very surprised if someone in your family did not respond well to this, is something for pressure. Okay, so pressure can come from pushback. So anything that's stretchy, if it's made out of a knit material like a t-shirt, or it's made out of swimsuit material, lycra, it's going to be stretchy. So you could have just a circle of stretchy material in there that your kiddo could push back against. They have body socks. Those work out really, really well for kids that need pushback and don't like weight. But remember, it's not just weight, it's stretchy or weighted. And then when you're talking about weighted, there's all kinds of weighted things out there, and there's adorable weighted things out there. But what we need to remember as parents, because we have so much we have to provide to our children, is that you can make your own weighted thing easy. Taking a pair of knee socks or tube socks or socks, the tall ones, go ahead and fill them with rice, tie the two socks together, and you've got a weighted neck snake. And it's out of likely socks your kid likes anyway. And so that's a perfect, easy way without any sewing to make a weighted snake. If you want a weighted lap pad, all you need to do is buy a 3 to 5 pound bag of rice at Walmart, put it in a pillowcase, tie a knot on it, and you have a weighted lap pad. So just weight is pretty easy to do, except as a weighted blanket. And now, 15 years ago, weighted blankets were extremely expensive, and many still are. Ours are because they're custom. But you can get an inexpensive weighted blanket out there. They're out there now. If you really are searching around, you can get one for under $50. And but sometimes you don't need a whole blanket. You just need a weighted thing to go right on your chest or to sit on your lap. Or we do a lot with weighted animals. And yesterday we were doing a sensory spotlight, and so the person that does them, her name is Megan, and she was talking about our dogs, and she was like, and it's a great sleep aid as her script when she was writing out. I was reading over what she wrote, and I said, well, I don't know if I would think of it as a great sleep aid, because then you'd have to be sleeping like this, and the dog's right here. And Megan said, oh, no. She said, I sleep with mine. I'm a side sleeper, and it's just really resting on my arm, but it gives me the security I need to go on to sleep. I was like, oh. So, how you use the weight is unique to the person. And in my mind, I was sort of, cornering it in. Well, it has to be used this way. No, it's whatever way that pressure gives you peace and calm in your body. And I've had a lot of people say, well, I don't understand what the weight is doing. Our bodies want gravity. We have gravity. We're used to gravity. If our astronauts go up in a space capsule and they need to go to sleep, they don't go to sleep floating around. They have to be strapped in so that they're grounded against the sides of the space station or whatever there is that they're sleeping. I'm not an expert on what it is in the space station, but I do know that for us to really go into a deep restorative sleep, we have to feel like we are not floating. A lot of our kids feel like they're floating all day long. They don't feel the gravity that you and I are feeling. And so it would be like if you and I were floating around, in the space capsule, that's how my daughter's feeling. So for her, one of her tools that she uses is to throw something weighted on her lap, across her shoulders, over her to sleep. One of the things that she used to do as part of her reboot routine when she came home was to throw her weighted blanket on her lap and crawl into a swing. And so that is what helped Natalie's brain just start de-escalating back down. And it really wasn't until she had gotten to a more neutral place that she could even explain to me the things that were really upsetting during the day. Because when you come in that flight of, you really aren't able to talk through what's going on. Your brain is flipped. You're not there anymore. And so we have to have those tools, and a sensory spot is a place where you can go to do that. So speaking of swings, we had a swing and we had a hook in 3 different rooms in our house. So we had one in the game room, we had one in one daughter's bedroom, and we had one in the other daughter's bedroom, and then we had one swing. It was on a carabiner, and we would just switch it room to room, whoever needed it at the time. The thing that's great about swings is that they come into your vestibular movement and getting the input that your brain needs from a swinging. It's all about the position of your head in space and that inner ear canal and the fluid that's in your ear and where your head is. And so it's always good to pull in that vestibular kind of input. And you can do it with a swing, or you can do it with any kind of rocking board or one of those inflatable seat cushions that you inflate it just to the amount that it gives you the amount of wiggle you want. And then you can stand on them to get that. You can sit on them through your bum to get that. And that's an easy way to tap into that vestibular input. Another thing that I really love are gliding rocking chairs. Any rocking chair is good just because of what it does, but the gliding rocking chair to me is the best one because it goes back and forth and you're not actually going this way and that way, you're moving this way and this way. And I never had one until I had Natalie, and then I was like, this is the best place I could possibly ever be, is sitting in this chair. And so if you have one of those in your attic from when you were rocking your baby, bring it down for your baby now because it is a really nice vestibular movement tool. So I would keep that in mind as well. So we've pulled in, visual. Okay, so visual can be too much stimulation, or it can also be calming. So when I'm pulling in a visual item or tool that I have in a sensory spot, I'm looking for something that moves slowly, because the point is we're running our engines back down. We've been up here and we got to get them back down. So I like an ooze tube. because it's a slow drip. Or something, one of the liquid motion bubblers or one of those, but I'm looking for one that is a slow drip, because we need our kids to be able to slowly look at it, think through things, and watch it go to the bottom. I also think having some kind of visual timer in that space is good, just because we need to give them some time to just do what they need to with the tools before they're having to talk about it. So my favorite timer that I've seen out there, I like the time timers, but they are quite expensive. And they have a red, you turn the dial and it turns red, and then as it's moving down, the red part gets smaller, and then your kiddo knows that the time is up. Well, I found one the other day that has red, green, and yellow. So when you turn it, you get that yellow to give them a warning, you get the green, and then you get the red when time is up. And so I like that visual. We also have a light that's called a time tracker, and you set the times on it, and the light on top is green until we're coming close to the end of the time, and then we go to yellow, and then at the alarm it turns red. So I think that helps our kids. There's all kinds of different apps on phones and all that sort of thing to help our kids understand the passage of time and how long something is taking, or how long they have until they're going to go to that next transitional time. So let's see, how are we doing on time? Oh, we're fine. Okay. So we've talked about visual. We've talked about auditory. No, we haven't talked about auditory. Okay, so auditorily, most kids like a repetitive sound. Not one that's too loud, but just a repetitive sound. So the poppers that are popular with everybody, a popper is a great thing to have a repetitive sound. Many times when you rub things back and forth in your hands, you're getting a brushing sound or something like that. Putting a sound machine into your sensory spot where they can turn on nature music, instrumental, whatever it is that they find relaxing. That's a good thing to have in there. And I don't recommend having a phone. And that is because our kids are on their screens all the time anyway. And blue light is not good for our kids. It does nothing to regulate us back down. So I just feel like if it's a no phone zone and we use other things that are not on our phones to bring in that auditory stimulation or the visual stimulation, the time management, it's better than putting one more electronic device into our sensory spot, is my thought. So visual, auditorily, olfactory, oral. We've talked about pressure, and pressure has to do with giving our muscles and our joints that feeling of gravity. So that's where the pressure piece comes in, and then the vestibular movement. So these are the things that you should keep in mind when you're choosing the things to go into your sensory spot, and they're available everywhere. They may already be in your house. As you're looking through, you're going, oh, we have that, we have that, we have that. Just pull them into one central location, because I know at our house, we spend a lot of time looking for things. And so if you kept a certain group of things that always stayed in the sensory spot, that would probably be the best way to do it, because then you're not going to be going, well, where is that timer? What did we do with the such and such? I do not have a minimalist home. We have more of a chaotic home, although I'd like to be a minimalist. I'm not one. And so for us, it's just having that, and it stays in that spot. Jim also asked me well, first of all, any questions from you three or anyone out there?
You said it was 8 total, so how many? What are the 8?
Okay, so it is visual, olfactory, auditory, oral, tactile, then vestibular, Then proprioceptive is the muscles and joints. That's where the pressure comes in. And then there's one more that I can't, it's a new one that is not new. It is one I had not heard identified yet, and I can't remember what it is, but it goes pretty much with all the things we're talking about. But you hit those 7 and you've hit them. And I just can't remember what that other one, they didn't used to talk about it 10 years ago. And then the other day I saw something pop up and I was like, what is that?
Internal and interoceptive?
Yes, interoceptive. What does it say about that? Does it give us a definition?
Sensations related to internal organs.
Internal organs. My pancreas is telling me that.
Oh, well, hunger, heart rate, respiration.
Okay. That makes
and elimination.
And elimination. Okay.
Like if you have to go to the restroom or something.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Well, that was cool.
My wonderful assistant, Vanna. Does anybody have any questions about those things?
I have a question about sensory overload thing.
Yes.
For example, I have a kid who cannot tolerate when somebody laughing, but the same kid is okay when his favorite cartoon is on and his favorite character laughing. And that is okay. And he plays a video game and it gets too loud. And in that video game, the guy makes very annoying sound. And I know he doesn't like it. But for somehow that video game is okay. But when we are laughing, when we are having social, that one, oh no, I'm too much sensory. Like
I think part of it is the choice, and the worst thing that I can do to my daughter who's 20 and has been for at least 6 years is take away the phone. Like, seriously, it can turn her into such rage at me taking away that piece of equipment, that I equate it to like addiction to drugs. That you are not going, I'm like, I am going to do that. And so I feel like there are a lot of things that make that video input so powerful to our children, and none of them are good. And we did try to limit, there's a power over our kids with
This
that
technology.
And so I would just say your son's choosing to watch that on his cartoon, but when you as a family, y'all are all laughing, well, he might not be choosing to be part of that, so you're annoying him. So in that, I talked about pleasant sounds or repetitive sounds our kids want, but I didn't talk about when you have sound they don't want. And of course, the first thing anybody thinks about in terms of kids with sensory issues are the headphones. And those are certainly out there. Natalie never wore any. She was, by the time we started having real issues with the sounds around her, she was old enough that she was not going to wear the headphones. But I have done a lot with her on ear plugs. So using a silicone earplug, a Mac that's moldable. There's even a brand called Decibels where they take the earpiece and you warm it, and then it fits into your ears. And so that was another thing that one of my employees told me about. She was like, do you know about Decibels? I'm like, I do not know about Decibels. And it's a company, and that's what it's hearing protection. That's where they started, but there are a lot of people like Olivia that found that product, and it's a comfortable ear, just muffle is really what it is. And I think that our kids have to be advocates for what they need. And what my daughter tends to want to do She wants the world to change based on what she is enjoying or not enjoying.
My kid is also.
And so I have to talk to her a lot, especially now she's a freshman in college, about, but the world's not going to change. You have to figure out what the problem is, and you can change you. Not necessarily you, who you are as a person, but the tools that you're using so that you can cope with being around the other people that are in the world. And that's a fact of life. It's just an important social skill. So the other night, I purchased these eye covers, like an eye mask, that have headphones in them as well. And I purchased them originally for the store for us to sell for people that needed a way to go to sleep with a mindfulness, story or something like that, or specialized music or something like that. And I bought them, and then I have had so many customers come in saying, I'm buying this for my college student because the noise in the dorm is really getting to them, or they can't go to sleep because other people are still awake and they're having to learn to live with other people. And I of course told my daughter, hey, I have these. And she said, because it was my idea, not hers. And so the interesting point why I'm bringing it up is that 3 days ago, she called me and she said, hey, Mom, do you still have any of those eye mask earphone things? Because both the people on either side of me, they just stay out late. They stay up later than I do. And I've just found I've got to go to sleep. And I want to try that. And I was like, yes. Because she figured out, she didn't call me that time and say, how can I get them to stop doing that? Which is what Natalie's normal reaction is. Help me, you make them stop doing that.
My child is like that.
And it doesn't work like that. And so I have just, spent 15 years trying to help Natalie figure out, I've said a billion times, did that turn out the way you wanted it to? And she's like, no, Mom, no. I'm like, okay, so now, since you did not get the result you wanted, what can you change so that next time you get a result you want? Well, she hates hearing all that. But I'm hoping that it's sinking into her thick skull that that's really the only thing we have is figuring out something different if you don't like how you screaming at your suite mates because they're being too loud at night and you can't go to sleep. Did that really work? No. So, and it's hard as parents. It is so hard to see your children struggle. I just want to say, this is what you have to do, Natalie. This is, just do this. I swear it will work. But kids aren't wired like that. At least mine aren't. Neither of mine are. And so it's just, we have to watch as things work and as things don't work. And then when they're ready as a teenager or an adult to say, well, do you have any ideas? Do you have any solutions? And we got a few we can just blurt out real quick before they say, no, Mom. So, and then, we just have 2 minutes left, but I know that Jim asked me to just address, how do you know when to ask for services or when to look into testing with your kiddo that's having issues? And I would just say that if you're just noticing that behaviors are happening, behavior is communication. Is communication to us as parents, to us as teachers. If things are happening that are not going smoothly, then we've got to look at what could be the cause. And I encourage parents to not get tripped up in the labels, because the labels, for me as a parent, all those labels mean, the only reason I want a label on my kid is if it gets them a service, an accommodation, something that helps them. Beyond that, it's just a label. You could put 12 labels on my kid on all the different things that she's got. And it really doesn't really make any difference. We all have things we struggle with, and we all have things that we are truly gifted in what we do. And the label is just such it trips us up, I feel like. And sometimes labels can be used as an excuse. Natalie's done that, where she wants a label so she can say, well, I do this because of that. Well, you do this because of that. But, the world doesn't really care what kind of label you've got in your diagnostic file.
My kid is also
It's so hard. It really is. Okay, since that's not me, I think that's my cue to stop talking. So I hope that my tardiness was not too difficult. And I hope that you got some tips and things that would help you. And I'd love to talk to you on the phone anytime if you have more questions.
Wait, no, don't leave.
Don't leave. Don't leave.
I want to say something.
Oh, okay.
That sounded ugly though, the way that I said it.